Imagine standing on Earth 400 million years ago. There are no birds chirping, no mammals scurrying, and definitely no dinosaurs roaring. There aren't even any forests. The land is quiet, almost alien. Low, strange-looking plants cling to damp soil, and the first insects crawl among them. The air feels heavy, thick with moisture. And then you see it, rising from the earth like a monolith. A towering pillar, nearly 9 meters tall. It's not a tree, it's not an animal. It's not anything you would recognize. Long before dinosaurs ruled the planet, something else stood taller than everything. Its name is Prototaxites. And for decades, scientists had absolutely no idea what it was. To understand this incredible mystery, we have to travel back to the Devonian Period, roughly 419 to 359 million years ago. This was a time when life had only just begun to colonize the land. The plants that existed were tiny, just a few centimeters to maybe a meter tall at most. There were no deep-rooted trees yet, no thick forests, no towering canopies casting shade. The continents themselves looked completely different, and the climate was much warmer. The soil was thin and fragile. Life on land was an experiment. Simple vascular plants were spreading, and early arthropods, like ancient millipedes and scorpion-like creatures, scurried between their primitive stems. The entire ecosystem was young, unstable, and rapidly evolving. And then, in the 19th century, paleontologists started finding fossils that simply didn't match that world at all. Massive, trunk-like structures were being pulled from ancient rock. Some of these fossils were over 8, even 9 meters tall, and up to a meter wide. In a world where the tallest plants were about waist-high, this thing was a skyscraper. When they were first described, they looked a lot like tree trunks. So scientists naturally assumed that's what they were: ancient conifers, some kind of early tree. The name they gave it, Prototaxites, even reflects that initial assumption. Proto means early, and taxites is a reference to yew trees. So early yew tree, it seemed logical enough. But there was a huge problem. The Devonian fossil record showed absolutely no evidence of forests that could support something this massive. The ancient plants were just too small. And the real shock came when scientists cut into the fossil to study its internal structure. They found something very, very strange. There were no growth rings like you'd see in a tree. There was no wood grain. There was no vascular plant structure at all. Instead, when they looked under a microscope, they saw a dense tangle of microscopic tubes, all woven together in a complex web. This was not wood. It wasn't any kind of plant tissue they recognized. It didn't match anything known at the time. For over a century, Prototaxites remained an evolutionary puzzle, a fossil that simply didn't fit the story of life on Earth. Let's go back to that world again. Imagine it. Low alien vegetation spreads across damp, muddy plains. Primitive plants, none taller than you, cover the landscape. And scattered across this terrain are these enormous, smooth pillars. They are thick, cylindrical, and have no branches. They look like organic towers rising from the ground. Some scientists believe they may have stood isolated, like lonely sentinels. Others suggest they grew in small clusters. But either way, they would have completely dominated the skyline. There were no large land predators yet. There were no towering trees to compete with for sunlight. If you were a small arthropod crawling across the Devonian soil, a Prototaxites would have seemed like a mountain. But what was it doing there? This is where the mystery really deepens. If it wasn't photosynthesizing like a tree, how did it grow so incredibly tall? How did it get its energy? How did it survive in a world that was still learning how to support complex life? By the late 20th century, new technology and improved microscopy allowed scientists to re-examine the fossil structure much more carefully. And they noticed that the internal network of tubes looked suspiciously like something else. Fungal hyphae. Those are the thread-like structures that make up the body of a fungus. But this new theory raised an even stranger question. Could a fungus really grow 9 meters tall? Today, we know fungi can be massive. Some underground fungal networks are kilometers wide, making them the largest organisms on Earth by area. But vertical growth like that? A fungus towering above the land? It seemed almost impossible. Yet, the evidence started to stack up. Isotopic analysis of the fossils suggested something critical. Prototaxites did not behave like a photosynthetic plant. Instead, it appeared to be consuming organic material from the soil, just like a modern fungus does. If that's true, then it means that before forests covered the Earth, before the first amphibians crawled out of the water, And long before dinosaurs roamed the planet, the tallest living structures on land were not trees. They were fungi. Giant towering fungi. Picture it one last time. A silent, ancient Devonian world. No birds singing in the sky. No leaves rustling in the wind overhead. Just the sound of the wind moving through low, strange plants, and these giant fungal towers rising like monuments from a forgotten age. Before reptiles, before forests, and before the roar of dinosaurs, Earth belonged to something much, much stranger. In our next episode, we'll dive deeper into the fossil evidence and uncover exactly why Prototaxites became one of the most hotly debated organisms in the history of paleontology. Because the more scientists looked, the less it behaved like a tree, and the more alien it seemed. Imagine a world long before the dinosaurs, a world ruled not by giant reptiles but by something far stranger. Picture a landscape dotted with colossal spires, some reaching up to 9 meters tall, towering over everything else. What were these giants? For decades, science had a simple answer. They were the first trees. But what if that answer was completely wrong? What if these ancient titans were not plants at all, but something that defies our modern understanding of life on Earth? Today, we're diving deep into the mystery of Prototaxites, the prehistoric giant that could rewrite the history of our planet's ecosystem. The story begins in 1859 in Canada. A scientist, John William Dawson, stumbled upon the fossilized remains of something truly massive. It looked like a giant, petrified tree trunk. Given its immense size and the era it came from, the Silurian and Devonian periods, around 420 to 370 million years ago, the conclusion seemed obvious. These had to be ancient trees, perhaps some kind of colossal conifer or fungus. Dawson named it Prototaxites, meaning first yew tree, and for over a century, that's what the world believed. Textbooks were written, museum displays were created, all depicting these giants as the first forests to conquer the land. But a few nagging questions remained, little inconsistencies that paleontologists just couldn't quite explain. The puzzle pieces didn't perfectly fit, and it would take modern technology to reveal the shocking truth. The first major crack in the ancient tree theory came from a place you'd least expect: a microscope. When scientists in the early 2000s, like Dr. Carol Houghton at the Smithsonian, decided to take a closer look at thin slices of Prototaxites fossils, they weren't prepared for what they saw. Instead of the familiar cellular structure of wood, the organized, rigid cells you'd find in any tree, they discovered something bizarre. The fossil was a dense, tangled mat of microscopic tubes, each just a few micrometers in diameter. This was nothing like a plant. Plant cells are boxy and structured. These were long, interwoven filaments. This internal structure was far more similar to the mycelium of a fungus, the vast network of threads that make up the main body of mushrooms. Could this 9-meter-tall behemoth actually have been a gargantuan mushroom? This new evidence threw the scientific community into a state of confusion. A giant fungus? It sounded like science fiction. But the more they looked, the stranger it got. One of the most fundamental features of a tree is its growth rings. Just like the rings you see on a stump, these circles tell the story of the tree's life, a year of growth for each ring. They are a universal characteristic of woody plants. So scientists scoured the Prototaxites fossils, looking for any sign of these annual growth rings. They found nothing. Zero. Not a single ring. This was a massive red flag. How could a 9-meter-tall tree grow to such a size without the structural support and growth pattern that defines every tree we know? It just didn't make sense. The evidence was pointing away from the plant kingdom entirely. The confusion among paleontologists was palpable. If it wasn't a tree, what on earth was it? The debate intensified. Scientists were split into camps. Some clung to the plant theory, suggesting it was a massive rolled-up liverwort or some other strange form of early plant life. Others championed the fungus hypothesis, arguing that the tube-like structure was undeniable proof. The problem was, neither explanation was perfect. A fungus that large would need an incredible amount of food to sustain itself. What was it eating in this early, simple ecosystem? And if it was a plant, why did it have none of the key characteristics of a plant? It was an organism that didn't fit. It broke the rules of botany and mycology. It was a biological enigma, a life form from a lost world that challenged the very foundations of our classification system. The realization began to dawn. Prototaxites wasn't just a weird tree. It was something else, something that required a complete paradigm shift in how we view early life on land. So let's put the pieces together. We have a colossal organism, 9 meters tall, that dominated the landscape for millions of years. It had no leaves, no branches, and no roots. Internally, it was made of a tangled mass of tiny tubes, not wood cells. And crucially, it had no growth rings. It was not a tree. It looked more like a fungus, but its sheer size strains the imagination and the principles of biology. For decades, it was hidden in plain sight, misidentified as the world's first tree. Now we know it was something far more mysterious. The question is no longer asterisk what kind of tree asterisk it was, but asterisk what was it? Asterisk, the answer to this question doesn't just solve a paleontological puzzle. It completely rewrites our understanding of what Earth's early ecosystems looked like. It forces us to ask, what other giants might be lurking in the fossil record, misidentified and waiting to be discovered? To truly grasp the strangeness of Prototaxites, we need to understand the world it lived in. This wasn't the lush green Earth we know. During the Devonian Period, terrestrial life was just beginning to take hold. The largest plants were barely a meter tall, small, primitive, and moss-like. Animals were just starting to crawl out of the oceans. The dominant land animals were things like scorpions, millipedes, and other invertebrates. In this world of miniatures, Prototaxites was a skyscraper. It was, without a doubt, the largest land-dwelling organism of its time, and possibly of all time up to that point. Its sheer scale is what makes the fungus theory so mind-boggling. Imagine a mushroom the size of a 3-story building. Where would it get the energy to grow so large? This is where the science gets really clever. A team led by geophysicist C. Kevin Boyce decided to analyze the carbon isotopes within the fossils. In simple terms, different types of organisms process carbon in different ways. Plants get their carbon directly from the atmosphere through photosynthesis. Fungi, on the other hand, are decomposers. They get their carbon by breaking down other organic matter. By comparing the ratio of different carbon isotopes in Prototaxites to other fossils from the same period, Boyce and his team could figure out its diet. The results were stunning. The carbon signature of Prototaxites was incredibly varied, far more than any single plant. This suggested it wasn't a photosynthesizer. Instead, it was absorbing carbon from a wide range of sources in the soil, exactly like a fungus would. This was the smoking gun. The chemical evidence strongly supported the idea that Prototaxites was a gigantic saprotrophic fungus, a world-eating mushroom. This discovery paints an incredible picture of early Earth, a landscape of low-lying vegetation punctuated by these colossal fungal spires. These weren't just passive structures. They were active participants in the ecosystem, decomposing vast amounts of organic matter and cycling nutrients through the soil, potentially paving the way for the more complex plant life that would follow. They were the true kings of the Devonian landscape. The mystery that began with a misidentified fossil in 1859 had finally been solved through a combination of microscopy and geochemistry. The first giant of the land was not a tree, but a fungus. It is a humbling reminder that the history of life on our planet is full of strange and unexpected turns, and that our world was once ruled by giants that defy our wildest imaginations. What does this mean for the story of life? It means that for a period of about 50 million years, the largest and most imposing figures on land were fungi. This reshapes our vision of the past and highlights the critical and often overlooked role that fungi have played in shaping our planet. We tend to be very plant and animal-centric in our view of evolution. But here is definitive proof that the fungal kingdom produced a titan that dwarfed everything else. It makes you wonder what other secrets are buried beneath our feet, waiting for the right technology and the right questions to be asked. The story of Prototaxites is a testament to scientific curiosity and the incredible, almost alien history of our own home. Before the dinosaurs, before the first towering trees, before even the first amphibians crawled onto land, our world was a truly alien place. Imagine a landscape, not of lush green forests, but of strange, silent giants reaching for the sky. What if I told you that for millions of years, the largest living things on land were not plants, but something far, far stranger? For decades, paleontologists were stumped by a bizarre fossil called Prototaxites. Found in rocks dating back over 400 million years, these things looked like massive, petrified tree trunks, some stretching up to 9 meters tall and a meter wide. But there was a problem. Trees hadn't evolved yet. So what on earth were these colossal pillars? The first guesses were all over the map. Were they a strange type of lichen? A rolled-up mat of liverworts? Some even proposed they were a completely extinct kingdom of life, something unlike anything we know today. The mystery deepened with every new fossil discovery. Scientists examining the fossils under a microscope found a network of interwoven tubes, not the complex vascular system of a plant. The structure was simple, yet it allowed these organisms to grow to monumental sizes. The answer, when it finally came, was more shocking than anyone had imagined. These ancient giants were fungi. Yes, mushrooms. Now I know what you're thinking. A 9-meter-tall mushroom? It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. But the evidence is compelling. In the early 2000s, a team of scientists, led by Francis Huber of the Smithsonian Institution, spent years meticulously studying these fossils. They confirmed the internal structure was made of hyphae, the thread-like filaments that make up the body of a fungus. But the real breakthrough came from geochemistry. A researcher named C. Kevin Boyce at the University of Chicago decided to look at the carbon isotopes within the fossils. Plants get their carbon from the air through photosynthesis, and they have a specific ratio of carbon-12 to carbon-13 isotopes. Animals and fungi, on the other hand, are heterotrophs. They eat other things. This means their carbon isotope ratio is much more varied, reflecting the diverse diet they consume. When Boyce and his team analyzed the isotopes in prototaxites, they found a huge variation, far more than you'd ever see in a plant. This was the smoking gun. Prototaxites wasn't photosynthesizing, it was eating. It was consuming the microbial and organic matter in the soil, just like a modern fungus. So let's rebuild this lost world. Picture it, the Silurian and Devonian periods around 420 million years ago. The continents are arranged differently, and the land is mostly barren rock and low-lying, moss-like vegetation. There are no birds in the sky, no buzzing insects, no animal calls echoing through the valleys. And rising from this quiet, primitive landscape are these colossal spires of prototaxites. Standing 9 meters, or almost 30 feet tall, they would have absolutely dwarfed everything else on land. The largest land animals at the time were tiny arthropods, like millipedes and scorpion-like creatures scuttling around the base of these fungal towers. These weren't just organisms. They were the architecture of the ancient world. They created the first vertical habitats, casting long shadows over a world that had, until then, been mostly flat. They were the first skyscrapers on planet Earth, and they were made of fungus. Imagine walking through this primeval forest. It wouldn't be a forest of trees, but a forest of prototaxites. The air would have smelled damp and earthy. The landscape would be dotted with these smooth, grayish pillars, some standing straight, others leaning or falling, slowly decomposing back into the soil they grew from. They would have played a crucial role in the ecosystem, breaking down organic matter and creating the very first rich soils that would later allow for the evolution of complex plant life. In a way, these giant fungi were the patient gardeners of the ancient world, preparing the planet for the green explosion to come. They were the silent kings of a fungal empire that lasted for tens of millions of years, a reign longer than that of the dinosaurs. They dominated the land, shaping the environment in ways we're only just beginning to understand. Of course, in science, the debate is never truly over. While the fungus hypothesis is the most widely accepted theory, it's not without its challengers. Some scientists still argue for the rolled-up liverwort mat theory, suggesting the isotope variation could be explained by the way these mats grew and decayed. Others propose it was a giant lichen, a symbiotic partnership between a fungus and an alga. These alternative ideas keep the mystery alive and push researchers to find even more conclusive evidence. Artists' interpretations vary wildly, from smooth, column-like structures to more gnarled and textured forms, reflecting the ongoing scientific discussion. Each new fossil fragment, each new analytical technique, adds another piece to the puzzle of this truly bizarre chapter in Earth's history. It's a fantastic reminder that the past is filled with creatures and worlds that defy our modern imagination. So as we look back at the reign of prototaxites, we're left with a profound sense of wonder. For an almost unimaginable stretch of time, our planet's landscape was defined not by green leaves and sturdy wood, but by the towering, silent forms of gigantic fungi. They rose, they dominated, and then they vanished, paving the way for the age of plants and eventually us. Their legacy is written in the very soil beneath our feet. But it leaves us with an incredible, lingering question. If a world ruled by 30-foot-tall mushrooms is just one of the lost worlds we've uncovered, what other astonishing and alien chapters of Earth's history are still out there, waiting to be discovered? What did our world really look like in the deep, deep past? Close your eyes, erase the forests, erase the birds. Erase every tree you've ever seen. Now step back 400 million years. The land is damp, rocky, and uneven. The air is thick with humidity. Small, primitive plants cling low to the ground, like green moss stretching endlessly across the horizon. There are no towering trunks, no rustling leaves. And then, in the distance, a shadow. A vertical column rising into the mist. 9 meters tall, silent, still, alone. Long before dinosaurs ever walked the earth, before forests reshaped the planet, something else stood at the top of the food web of height. Its name is Prototaxites. And if scientists are right, the tallest organism of its time was not a tree. It was a fungus. To understand this world, we need to dismantle our modern expectations. Today, forests dominate continents. Trees regulate the climate, their roots stabilize soil, and their canopies create layered ecosystems. But in the early Devonian period, Earth was still experimenting. Plants had only recently colonized the land. The earliest vascular plants, like Rhynia and Cooksonia, were small and fragile, reaching no higher than your ankle or knee. They lacked complex root systems. They had no true leaves. Their stems were simple. The soil itself was immature. Before deep-rooted trees, soil formation was limited. Rock weathering was slow, and organic buildup was minimal. The landscape would have felt open, exposed. And in that openness, verticality mattered. Any organism that could grow tall gained access to airflow, advantages for spore dispersal, and ecological dominance. Prototaxites did exactly that. Some fossils show trunks nearly 1 meter wide. This wasn't a thin stalk. It was a massive biological column. In a world where nothing else approached its height, it would have defined the skyline. Imagine walking through a plain of low vegetation and encountering a structure taller than a modern streetlight. Alone, unmoving, mysterious. The fungal hypothesis changed everything. Modern fungi are typically small above ground mushrooms, brackets, molds. But what we see is only the fruiting body. The real organism often spreads underground as vast networks of hyphae. Some fungal networks today cover kilometers. They connect trees, exchange nutrients, and form the hidden architecture of forests. Now, imagine that concept, but amplified in a primitive world. Prototaxites may have been a giant, above-ground extension of a massive underground network feeding on decaying plant material, breaking down early organic matter and recycling nutrients back into the soil. In early terrestrial ecosystems, decomposition systems were still evolving. Large herbivores didn't exist yet. Complex food webs were minimal. Fungi would have played an outsized role in stabilizing nutrient cycles. A 9-meter-tall fungus may not have been an anomaly. It may have been an ecological solution. When plants are small and competition for sunlight is low, the limitations on growth shift. Height becomes less about light and more about dispersal. Spores released from 9 meters would travel much farther in the Devonian winds. That alone could explain its towering form. Not for dominance, but for reproduction. Even in simplicity, ecosystems form relationships. Devonian land was home to early arthropods, millipede-like creatures, primitive arachnids, and early insects. These animals were small, vulnerable, and experimental. Prototaxites may have created microclimates. At its base, shade would have reduced evaporation, allowing moisture to linger longer and microbial communities to thrive. Its surface could have hosted bacteria and lichens. Its decaying layers might have fed the early soil systems. In modern ecology, when a tall structure enters an open environment, it changes everything. Wind patterns shift, moisture distribution changes, and species cluster around it. Now, imagine that happening on a continental scale. Instead of forests shaping ecosystems, perhaps fungal towers were the first to alter terrestrial habitats. Prototaxites may have acted as a kind of biological scaffolding for future complexity, a temporary architect of life's expansion onto land. But evolution is relentless. By the late Devonian, plants evolved dramatically. True trees appeared. Archaeopterysts developed woody trunks and deep roots. Forests began to spread. And forests did something transformative. They locked carbon into wood. They increased oxygen levels. They stabilized soils at an unprecedented scale. The world that prototaxites thrived in, open, low, and nutrient-scarce, began disappearing. Deep roots altered mineral cycles. Thick leaf litter changed decomposition rates. Competition for nutrients intensified. If prototaxites relied on a specific ecological niche, that niche was vanishing. And when niches vanish, so do their specialists. The fungal giant may have been perfectly adapted to a temporary world, but not to the forested one that followed. When we picture prehistory, we imagine sound, roars, footsteps, thunderous movement. But the Devonian land was quiet. No large vertebrates roamed. No towering reptiles stalked prey. Instead, the dominant vertical presence may have been silent fungal pillars. No nervous system, no eyes, no movement. Just growth, just persistence. For millions of years, they may have stood as the tallest life forms on Earth. Then they vanished. Not in a catastrophe, not in an explosion, but through ecological replacement. Supplanted by trees, overshadowed by forests. Eventually forgotten beneath sediment and stone. There was a time when the tallest living things on Earth were not animals, not trees, not even plants. They were something we barely recognize today. Life's history is not a straight line toward dinosaurs or humans. It is a series of experiments. Some last for billions of years. Others dominate briefly and then disappear. Prototaxites reminds us of something profound. Before the roar, there was silence. Before forests, there were towers of fungus. And before dinosaurs ruled the earth, the land belonged to giants that never walked at all. In the vast, silent expanses of prehistoric Earth, long before the reign of Tyrannosaurus rex, lived the planet's first true giants. These weren't dinosaurs, but something far more ancient, something almost alien. We're talking about the Carboniferous period, a time 300 million years ago when the world was a giant steaming swamp and the air was thick with oxygen. This unique environment gave rise to life forms of terrifying proportions. Imagine a dragonfly with the wingspan of a modern eagle, a millipede the length of a car, and scorpions the size of a dog. These were the arthropod titans, the true first giants of our world. But if they were so successful, so dominant, where did they all go? Today, we unravel the epic story of their rise and the dramatic environmental shift that led to their spectacular fall. This is the tale of the lost world of the megabugs. Before we dive into their extinction, let's picture the world they inhabited. The Carboniferous period was like nothing on Earth today. Vast, humid forests of giant ferns and club mosses stretched across the continents. There were no flowers, no grasses, just a seemingly endless green labyrinth. And crucially, oxygen levels in the atmosphere were nearly 35% compared to our 21% today. This oxygen-rich air was the secret ingredient to their gigantic size. Arthropods, like insects and spiders, don't have lungs like we do. They breathe through a network of tiny tubes called trachea that deliver oxygen directly to their cells. In today's atmosphere, this system is only efficient enough for small bodies. But in the Carboniferous, the superoxygenated air allowed them to grow to monstrous sizes. Meet the star players of this ancient world. Soaring through the swampy skies was Meganeura, a griffin flea that looked like a dragonfly on steroids. With a wingspan of up to 2.5 feet, it was the largest insect ever to fly. It was an apex predator of the air, hunting other insects and even small amphibians with its spiny legs and powerful jaws. On the forest floor, another giant lurked. Arthropleura, a colossal millipede, could grow over 8 feet long and 2 feet wide. It wasn't a predator, but a gentle giant, munching on decaying plant matter. Its fossilized tracks, found in ancient sandstone, looked like parallel tire marks, a testament to its incredible size. And then there was Pulmonoscorpius, the breathing scorpion. Reaching lengths of over 2 feet, it was a fearsome hunter, armed with a venomous stinger and powerful claws. These creatures weren't just big, they were the rulers of their domain. For millions of years, these giants thrived. The warm, wet climate and abundant plant life provided the perfect conditions. The dense forests offered endless food and shelter, while the high oxygen levels fueled their massive bodies and energetic lifestyles. They were a testament to life's ability to adapt and seize opportunities. In a world without large vertebrate predators on land, these arthropods faced little competition. They were at the top of the food chain, the undisputed kings and queens of the Carboniferous jungle. Their success seemed limitless, their reign eternal. But in the story of our planet, no dynasty lasts forever. The very conditions that allowed them to flourish held the seeds of their downfall. The world was about to change in a way they could never have prepared for. The end of the Carboniferous period marked the beginning of a new chapter in Earth's history, an event known as the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. Over a relatively short geological time span, the global climate began to shift dramatically. The planet started to cool and dry out. The vast, interconnected swamp forests that had dominated the landscape for millennia began to fragment and shrink. What caused this? It's believed that a combination of factors, including continental drift and a period of glaciation, led to a drop in sea levels and a much more arid climate. The world was transforming from a global greenhouse into a drier, more seasonal planet. For the giant arthropods, this was a catastrophe. Their entire world was disappearing from beneath their many feet. The primary killer wasn't just the loss of their swampy homes. It was the air itself. As the climate changed and the vast forests died back, a crucial element began to vanish from the atmosphere: oxygen. The massive plant life of the Carboniferous had been pumping out oxygen for millions of years, maintaining those high concentrations. As these forests declined, so did the oxygen levels, plummeting from their high of 35% down to levels much closer to what we have today, or perhaps even lower for a time. For the giant arthropods, this was a death sentence. Their massive bodies and inefficient respiratory systems were completely dependent on that oxygen-rich air. Suddenly, every movement became a struggle. They were, in essence, slowly suffocating. It was like a human trying to function at the top of Mount Everest without an oxygen tank. The changing world also brought new competition. As the swamps retreated, new ecosystems emerged, favoring different kinds of life. This was the time when reptiles began their rise to dominance. Unlike the giant insects, early reptiles had more advanced respiratory systems, with efficient lungs that could cope with the lower oxygen levels. They were also better adapted to the drier conditions. Creatures like Dimetrodon, with its famous sailback, were agile, powerful predators. The giant, slow-moving arthropods, already weakened by the thinning air, would have been easy prey for these new vertebrate hunters. The kings were being overthrown. Their size, once their greatest advantage, had become their fatal flaw. They were too big to hide, too slow to escape, and too breathless to fight back. The fall was swift and brutal. Within a few million years, most of the giant arthropods were gone forever. Meganeura's giant wings no longer cast shadows over the swamps. Arthropleura's massive form no longer bulldozed through the undergrowth. The era of the Titans was over. A few of their smaller cousins survived, adapting to the new oxygen-poorer world, and their descendants are the insects, spiders, and millipedes we know today. But the giants themselves became fossils. Their incredible story locked away in stone for 300 million years. Their extinction was a pivotal moment in the history of life, paving the way for the age of reptiles and eventually, the dinosaurs. It serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how dominant a species may be, its survival is always tied to the health of its environment. So, could these giants ever return? It's highly unlikely. To get insects that big again, we would need to recreate the specific conditions of the Carboniferous period: a warmer, wetter world, and most importantly, a dramatic increase in atmospheric oxygen. While our planet's climate is changing, it's not trending in a way that would favor the return of megabugs. Their story is a fascinating chapter in Earth's deep history, a glimpse into a truly alien world that once existed right here. They were the first giants to walk the Earth, a spectacular but ultimately failed evolutionary experiment. Their reign was a product of a unique planetary moment, and their fall was a direct consequence of that moment ending. The legacy of the Carboniferous giants is a powerful lesson in the delicate balance of life and environment. They show us how profoundly the composition of our atmosphere can shape the evolution of life on our planet. The next time you see a dragonfly or a millipede, take a moment to imagine its ancient ancestor, a creature of monstrous proportions that ruled a world long lost to time. They are a faint echo of a time when insects, not vertebrates, were the true giants of the land. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to the age of the megabugs. If you enjoyed this dive into deep history, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from our planet's incredible past. See you next time.